David McGinley, and welcome to Healing for Cancer and Healing and Cancer podcast. We're joined tonight by Karen Raymer, and we are really curious to discuss her journey with cancer, diagnosed with breast cancer, and how she coped, tapped into her inner strength, and maybe we'll all gain from that wisdom. We're joined as well by, of course, Rutledge tonight, and welcome to everyone who's tuning in. Really hope that this podcast is something that's going to give you strength and insight, so that perhaps you can even hear parts of your story and your experience coming through these words and recognize how well you're coping and different ways to journey through it. So welcome, Karen. Great to have you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that kind introduction, and welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So Karen, we're grateful Karen's with us. Karen is an anesthesiologist, so we'll have a particular insight into the medical aspects of the cancer journey, which ended up aiding her profoundly in detection and awareness of moving through. I'm always curious, when a healthcare professional is diagnosed with cancer, sometimes that extra knowledge is too unsettling, but it can give them real clear understanding, better understanding of the roadmap ahead. So we'll discuss that, as well as so many of the other aspects of what it's like to be diagnosed and go through the cancer journey. So that's great. We're going to start, of course, as we usually do, with a brief meditation. Really want to ground ourselves and focus our hearts and our minds and be fully present, because when you're fully present, you're tuning into yourself. You know, how we spend so much energy avoiding ourselves, and to tune into the wisdom of our own emotions and thoughts and feelings, really have to be fully present. So to start, we'll have just a moment. If everyone can feel their body supported by their chair, and listen to the noises that are around you, the sounds that might be in the room nearby, and tune in to what is held in this moment, drawing the breath down to the stomach, lowering the diaphragm, pausing to listen, and perhaps ask yourself, what am I hoping to gain from the podcast? What do I need to explore? And feeling that connection, I'm going to say a brief prayer, as is my own spiritual practice as a chaplain with the cancer patients. Great Spirit of Life, may we be open to encounter a wisdom beyond our own, deep hidden within us. May we be wise in accessing that wisdom and employing it in our own journey. May we be compassionate, realizing we do walk with so many, even when we feel profoundly alone. May our healing begin in our soul and manifest from there outwards. Okay. Let it be so. So Karen, it's great to have you with us. Very curious to chat with you, because the story written in the Healing Circle about your journey is so, it's quite powerful, because you seemed to access your own wisdom and the truth of your experience fairly quickly, or you articulated it very succinctly. And I don't know if it feels like that from the inside, but for the reader, if they're reading this book, it certainly does feel like that. So tell us a bit about the journey from diagnosis, and how did this journey begin?
I was just about to turn 40, and I think it was probably within a couple of days prior to my 40th birthday. And I don't know if I was just sort of had my hand on my chest in an odd way or something, and I just became instantly aware of a lump there, like a very large lump, actually. and I was sort of smiling to myself when you were indicating how, as a physician, it would help me in certain ways. I felt sort of horrified. How did I miss this? Especially as a physician, but this was not subtle. And I think, I was reflecting on it a bit over the last few days, and I think a lot of women, when they're getting diagnosed with breast cancer in particular, there's a period of waiting. There's maybe a lump, and then there's a biopsy, and there's a period of time where, you're waiting for an answer. And as excruciating as that is, I'm just speculating that it's a time for processing. For better or for worse, I didn't have any of that, because as a physician, my hand went under my armpit, and I could feel lymph nodes. So as a physician, in the course of about 30 seconds, I went from, just doing some mundane desk work to thinking, with my kids making noise in the background and normal day-to-day life, to all of a sudden, an instant realization, oh my goodness, like, I have breast cancer and it has spread to my lymph nodes. I mean, I wasn't even put on hold on a telephone call or anything. It was just sort of an instant shock. Yeah.
Wow. Yes, and you are standing, realizing this, and you were getting ready to go to work, right? You're ready to.
Yeah, I don't think it was a work day. I think it was the end of a weekend, but yeah, it was just a regular day. It was a regular day at home. I think it was a weekend. My husband was home, and he had our 2-year-old on his lap in another room, and I just came into the room like hysterical, telling him this news, which probably to him would seem absolutely crazy, but it was true, and I knew it was true.
He had your 2-year-old, and you have another child who was 6 at the time.
Probably, yeah, he would have been. He would have been just turned 6, yeah. So she would have been 3, actually, yeah.
You rush in to tell your husband. He can see the terror, or he can sense that. And what do? Do you go immediately to the hospital? What was your next step?
Well, this is where the being the doctor part. I phoned the hospital to see who was on call, knowing that this falls under the domain of a general surgeon. Not that this would be, I was just curious to see who it was, and it turned out the person on call was somebody I would go to by choice in this situation. And so because he was on call, I gave him a call and talked to him and said, can I come and see you tomorrow? This is what I found, and this is what I'm worried about. And so he saw me the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for most people, when they receive their diagnosis, which is usually they receive it from a doctor, it could be a family doctor, or it's usually after a series of tests.
Right.
But you knew enough not to have to wait for those tests. For most people, they go through then a series of experiences. Incredulity, shock, the wind gets knocked out of them, the cognitive dissonance sets in, and there can even be a tunnel effect in which voices become muffled after the word cancer is said. They're not able to comprehend or process what follows in the conversation after that. Many don't even remember walking out to the car and sitting down, and they may not break down until after they get home. They may go into a period of numbness. Did you experience any of these?
Yeah, I would say some of the things you're saying I do relate to. I think I probably functioned outwardly. I think I probably was still unloading the dishwasher an hour later, or doing what needed to be done. But I relate to all of those things that you said. I think the timeline was so compressed. I don't know if you believe in stages of grief or something so kind of, you know, structural as that. But if there are stages, I think the suddenness of it just maybe jumbled it all up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. The
impact
stages.
is the same. The impact is the same.
Yeah. The stages are a nice way to describe it. There's anger and bargaining and negotiation and shock and denial and all those things. But of course, we find they aren't linear. They come all jumbled and mixed up, and you bounce among them, and
Yeah.
they're all aspects of the experience. And yeah, you felt those, and they are also survival mechanisms. They enable you to do things like load the dishwasher, get the little laundry in, then go to the hospital.
Mhm.
They
Right.
enable you to do the things of normal life and carry on forward.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing, because this may be a sensitive issue for some people. When I saw the surgeon the next day, and he examined me and he confirmed this is not good. He's a very straight shooter, and he I asked, tell me what's what could the future be, kind of thing. And he gave me some hope. um, he said there's a lot of people that survive with positive lymph nodes, long term. And he said, and even metastatic disease, you can live, for many years. He was sort of, and I was asking for this information basically as part of my mental process. I'm a very logical person. It's a problem. So I just want to say, he sent me right away across the street to where the cancer hospital was, and I had a biopsy done and an ultrasound and a mammogram and all of that. And to them, I said, I am so grateful to be taken the same day, like literally within 20 hours of even knowing that there was an issue. I'm here getting a biopsy, and I just, I'm very grateful for whatever strings got pulled or whatever I said. And they said, oh no, this is what we do. If you had walked into your family doctor, they could refer you the same day. We see women the same day. This is at the breast center, the breast health center in the city that I live in. So I just don't want to leave the impression that, not that I wouldn't have welcomed it, but I didn't get some sort of accelerated care that wouldn't be accessible to anybody. But I was grateful for it.
And we do find across the country there are different wait times for mammograms, for CT scans. There are certainly wait times for getting in to see a doctor, even your family doctor.
Yeah.
And it's different across the country, and even within one center, some people may move much faster than others. Really appreciate you commenting on that, because there are understandably many people who are so frustrated about the wait to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But then you were placed in the queue for surgery.
Yep.
And that is, done on a basis of not just first come, first serve, but priority. And
Yeah.
there are so many factors into that. If we can leap ahead to surgery, do you recall your thoughts as you went into it?
Yeah, I think by that point I was kind of euphoric because the metastatic workup was negative.
Mm.
So, I mean, I understood it means at this time there's no visible encampments of tumor. But that was a hurdle to get through, to having them look at the liver, having them look at all your bones, having them look at your chest x-ray. That's nervous time, And so I think I felt like, I got one, and I got some time here. Like, it wasn't horrible news from the get-go. So I was still feeling pretty, happy about that and grateful.
Yeah.
Felt like one in the win column, I guess. So yeah, I was going. This was it was a long weekend in August, so it was a traditional weekend where the whole family goes up. Our extended family all meets at our ancestral cottage, and we celebrate birthdays and together. So it was the first time in probably forever that I hadn't uh, joined my family there. And so Brian stayed behind with me. There's sort of a games, sort of a fun little Olympic day for the kids. So my sister took the kids up, and I think it was very hard on them, not my kids, but on my family. Uh, Seeing the kids there without me, trying to keep it all normal for them, knowing I was in surgery that day. I think I had the easiest time of anybody.
Yeah, it's an ironic reality. The family often goes through more emotional distress than the patient does.
Yeah.
Not to minimize the patient's distress, but the patient takes a different trajectory from the start than the family, and it's an odd it's an odd thing to realize how you live with the awareness and contemplating cancer within your body 24/7 from the moment of diagnosis. The family feel outside of the experience. How can they help? There's a sense of helplessness instead of that depth of existential engagement, if I can just put it that way. It's quite different. The biggest concern is usually the kids and telling the kids and how to protect them. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah. That's a tough one. And as everything I worked through and, continue to work through, I can never find a way around feeling okay about the impact of, a shortened lifespan on kids. I mean, there's just, and that was a part, thinking about that was always really hard. In terms of talking to them, they were at an age, I think you would always have to just judge it, what you were going to say based on your knowledge of who those kids were, their personalities, their understanding, their age, their developmental age. My daughter was 3, so, there really wasn't much to say. Um, she knew I had a boo-boo, and, like my son, I did tell him, we did tell him, and, he just said, "Are you going to die?" Like the only person he knew with cancer was his grandfather, who had died before he was born. So, um, you know, but he was sort of, yeah, I said, well, I don't know what I said actually. Um, but he was kind of matter of fact about it, not about me dying, but just about, yeah, okay, is the conversation over because I've got something I'm doing in the next room? Kind of, that was sort of his attitude. Um, I think they take in a little bit at a time. Maybe they've got a mechanism to say, okay, that's enough for now. I think more through chemotherapy, he was probably more aware of, seeing me go through that over a period of months.
You would lose your hair.
Yeah.
How did they respond to that?
Yeah, I don't think they liked it. Like I usually would wear a scarf or I had a wig, and they would prefer, sometimes you just don't feel like, you know, having something on your head, but they would prefer it. At least my son would, I think. He would say,
Yeah.
It's just it's a reminder of your unwellness in a certain way. I think that the hardest part is just being so low energy and not being able to be your usual kind of vigorous parent, and the impact of that, and trying to make sure they're always aware that it's not because you don't want to be, and it's not because they're doing anything wrong. It's just that you don't feel well. And no matter how many kids are different, mine were really attached to me, so all of the offers of other people helping, I knew it was a second, aside from maybe my sister and my mom, they would really prefer me. So I felt that, you feel guilty as a mother. But they were at the age where there really wasn't much to talk about. But I think my son did talk about it with his friends, because one of his friends said to me, said, my son's name, let's say Johnny. Johnny said, "You almost died," where that was his way of maybe conceptualizing. Like, he wasn't conceptualizing, I might not, it's in the future. It was sort of, well, it almost happened, but then it didn't happen, kind of thing. So I was okay. I don't think kids need to know. There's uncertainty about everything. So I don't go telling him about all the other possible things that could happen.
Right.
I could be in a car accident. A meteor could land on our house, and it's very, I don't want to instill anxiety. So it's finding that balance of feeling honest and yet being age appropriate.
So as a parent, inevitably the script starts to run in your mind. And if this takes a turn for the worst, what should I do? A lot of parents say, I'm going to make a legacy project. I'm going to record messages. And,
right.
and did you go through those thoughts as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What did you
I mean, I think I might have talked to Rob about it. And I sensed, I became aware of the importance of where my mental space was. And that, I don't want to be spending a lot of time, closing up the cottage for the winter kind of thing, or feeling like a lot of my mental energy is shutting everything down. So I did give some thought to that, and I did buy a book that kind of gave it's like a book that you would fill in. It gave like a template of things you might want to write and everything. And I had that, one for my daughter, one for my son. I had it, and I started looking at it, and then I thought, okay, I just gotta put this away. Like, I've got it, but I don't know that I want to be. I'll wait and see. I'll trust that I might have enough time to do that if it comes to that. Yeah.
So yeah. Then then you're able to invest in the moment and invest in that emotional energy going into creating good moments and memories, which are I've found the best investment possible for a normal lifespan as well.
Right, because then your kid's memory could be of mom writing in the memory book. You don't want that to be sort of your legacy that you spent the last couple of years of your life, creating the memory box rather than being out there picking apples or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that mental headspace, even things like committing to doing something that's a long time away, like making an airplane reservation that's 9 months ahead. Okay, you can get travel insurance, but still, it kind of feels like tempting fate, assuming that, yeah, we're going to go out west to visit Brian's family next Christmas. Let's get the tickets now. It's almost like, well, how can you be so presumptuous? Maybe better. So that's a little bit of a wrestle that I went. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of the negotiation with mortality, right? That's the how am I going to hedge my bets? And a lot of people, you get lost. You don't know what to do, and some say, I'm just going for it. I'm going to do whatever I want. And we're going to make the plans and live into that. And there can be hope that that's going to activate some type of spiritual energy that's going to increase prognosis and longevity.
Yeah, but I think I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and I did some courses through Wellwood. I'm not even sure if it was Wellwood, but I did. That was my plan A, was finding out a way to make sure I beat this.
What did you come up with?
Plan B. I'm a very opinionated person, so sometimes when I say things, it can come across like this is the only way to think. But this is for me, and I totally respect other people would have a different way that was the right way for them. But in efforts to find a way to make sure I was going to beat this, I realized that the only really resilient piece, the only really resilient way to deal with it would be to accept not beating it. So that was kind of a painful recognition, but yeah,
How,
so that's where it had
how,
to go. Yeah.
how do you visualize that? Did you say, this would be my journey, I won't be here, I'll be dead?
Oh no!
Or what's the acceptance? I mean, accepting mortality. How did you work with that?
Yeah, not envisioning the event like what you're describing. Like, okay, it's going to come back, and then I'll get sick again, and maybe I'll fight it off for a few years, and then I'll die, and everyone will live without me. Not like that. It's a more of a philosophical level that you are always going to die of something. You were not going to live forever. That was never the deal. And this experience has just made you aware of that. Everyone around you, who's also 40 years old, is still living the way you used to live, which was thinking that, dying is for old people and I'm not going to die. And so it was sort of a philosophical recognition that you've just been awakened to a reality, and there's pain with that. It's real pain with that, and then there's real beauty with that, and that there's no way to the other side of that, like, other than going right through it. So very painful process, but no, not envisioning the end, not figuring out how people would make out or anything like that, but just more of an acceptance that this is the deal. Like, yeah.
That's really important when when we are able to open to our suffering. Our relationship to our suffering can change, and our life can actually be deepened and amplified. Right? There can be a more authentic and nuanced engagement with life. When we're investing so much energy into denying the possibility of suffering, we can actually increase our suffering because we're so anxious about that. But what you're speaking about is a shift in the orientation of your being, of your relationship to life itself. It can be an odd feeling to have that. You're walking around and everyone can feel like it seems like they are asleep to this reality.
True.
And did you find that it deepened compassion? Did you find it shifted your connection to others who suffer?
Definitely. Yeah. But I think it is an odd way to walk around, and I think that's why we don't generally walk around like that. And it's sort of like, like your nerve endings are all kind of exposed to the surface or something. Everything's beautiful, everything's sad, everything's like heightened.
Yes.
And so you take it in little doses, and I think especially being well for a while, you kind of go back to your own old ways. It's kind of like, if you think the plane's going down, you get religion really fast, and once you're on the ground again, it's sort of like, oh, is it Sunday morning? I did say I'd go to church, didn't I? You can kind of lose the touch with, ironically, being well. You can't have it both ways, right? It comes from the pain. It comes from the pain of having to confront those hard truths. So
that's an exhausting enlightenment to maintain.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Constantly.
Yeah, but it does come back. You get. I did have a health scare kind of about maybe two years ago, where I got, quite a severe pain in my rib, on the same side as the breast cancer. And I saw my oncologist, and chest x-ray was normal, but they did a bone scan, and there was a hot area, like the bone scan showed an area that was abnormal, right where it was hurting. And so over the period of time, getting these results, and it was the normal process of waiting for weeks to get the test and then waiting for weeks for the result. I got back in touch with that place, and it's like anything, going, the route back, it's not a foreign place anymore. You try to revisit it, you try to keep that connection, because it's really the only resilient space to cope with potential catastrophe, really. So anyway, the end of the story was, it seemed to be just like a fracture. Probably the radiation had weakened the bone there. So they didn't feel it was a metastatic. It's been a couple of years. They said, well, we should check it again in 6 months. And I said, I'm okay to live with, I felt it was okay. I didn't think it was likely to be something bad at that point, just based on what my oncologist had said. So so these things come up, and you revisit. Like you say, it's hard to walk around like that all the time, but I know that I'm always one moment away from getting slapped with something. Yeah.
There's that whole sense of control, the illusion of control.
Yeah.
And the freedom that comes with not releasing control, but becoming open to the ambiguity.
Yeah.
For you.
Absolutely. But people will hold you back from that. The people around you will hold you back from that. And I think...
How do they hold you back?
I think in a very well-intentioned way, and also out of their own fear. They will tell you that you can beat this. And I mean, that's the nicest thing to say to someone on the surface. But it's not the best thing to say. I guess it depends. Here's me being very opinionated, but people will put it on the cancer patient, or the patient with the person with a cancer diagnosis. They get held holding the can to create their own survival from it. Based on, if you think positively, if you do all the right things, you can beat this. Where if you broke your leg, they would not say, like, just think positively and the bone will get back together again. So I think it comes, cancer is very mysterious. It's hard to kind of picture what's happening, and it's all kind of inside your body in a place that you can't see. And you get a lot of messages, especially breast cancer. It's a big thing in the community about survival. And I found that it kind of would pull me away from really where I needed to be. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I want to survive more than as much as anyone you know. I don't want to give the impression that I'm okay with either, and that I wouldn't be angry, and that I haven't been tremendously angry. But you can't put everything on. I can't put everything on surviving.
Yeah.
And yeah. I can't pretend that I can control it with my mind. I can live a happier, more peaceful, more rewarding existence, but I cannot physically control an outcome with my mind. I don't believe, and I don't like those messages. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to be negative. But.
And those, that's part of the mystery of healing. How the mystery of what role the mind and the heart and the soul and the feelings play. We know that when we remember a fearful memory, our body will register that. We know there's a link between our thoughts and our feelings. It can put a smile on your face and make you dance for joy, and it can bring tears to your eyes and curl you into a ball. But the role it plays in shrinking a tumor is not anything that can be linear. That's
Yeah, I do feel there is a mind-body connection.
Yeah.
And I manifest that in my own, like I got to a certain point where I started intentionally making long-term plans and taking on roles that would require me to live another 5 years, like in addition to parenthood, but actual roles with dates that, you know, required a degree of optimism to. And I was aware of, it's important for my head, like I said before about not sitting and writing the final, you know, memory book for the kids, is where my headspace. I don't think that's healthy for me. And I do think there's a connection. I just don't think that we should be handed this expectation that it's all within our control. If we just think the right things and if we just eat the right things, then, you know, it's a lot of pressure. And I don't think it's that simple, and I don't think it's mostly true. And
healing is
it is well intentioned, but I think it also comes out of fear, because we all wish it were so. You know, nobody wants to see a young person, you know, succumb to an illness. We all wish it were true, as simply as that.
Yes, how wonderful it would be if it was as simple. But there are so many other factors at play in what causes cancer as well as what restores cancer. Rob, I'm wondering if you, as a radiation oncologist, of course, you have insights, and from your own spirit, you see these at play in the journey. I'm wondering if you had a question or comment about that.
No, it's wonderful to have Karen on, because you have the lived wisdom, and I'm actually in the same space as well, is that we can do these things, we can have these healthy habits. I know Karen, you know, exercises, eats really well, does all the things that the science says improves your chances of cure, and it's really important to have that positive, optimistic attitude. But the fact is, we just don't know what's going to happen in the future, and that's just the truth. And just, I'm wonderful. It's great for me to sit back and just have the lived wisdom, you know, being shared by someone who's been through it. So I'm wondering if it's worth having Karen share some type of reading, and then we can transition into kind of talking about some of these bigger issues of fear, faith, spirituality, and so on.
No.
Sure. I have some writings from Pema Chodron, and she is a Buddhist, and these are from her book called When Things Fall Apart. Heart advice, not hard advice, but heart advice for difficult times. And I really recommend the book. And I've kind of pulled 3 different passages that occur in different sections of her book and put them together. And I hope that's okay with her, but she's a Zen Buddhist, so I'm assuming that she's going to be easygoing about it. Sorry. Okay. So I'll just read this. It actually relates to what we talked about. As human beings, not only do we seek resolution, but we also feel that we deserve resolution. However, not only do we not deserve resolution, we suffer from resolution. We don't deserve resolution. We deserve something better than that. We deserve our birthright, which is the middle way, an open state of mind that can relax with paradox and ambiguity. Cutting our expectations for a cure is a gift we can give ourselves. There is no cure for hot and cold. They will go on forever. Things falling apart is a kind of testing, and also a kind of healing. We think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem. But the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. Then they come together again and fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, for relief, for misery, and for joy.
Wow. For many people, that is going to be a breath of fresh air. They may practice their faith and then cling to it even more when they get the diagnosis, and feel if they just believe strong enough, or if they're good enough, or if God is good enough, then this will work out. And they're crying out for peace in their heart, for feeling safe. And the ironic thing is spirituality doesn't offer you safety. In fact, it offers you danger. To go to the places that scare you, which is the name of one of Pema's books, right? To happiness and peace of mind and joy are side effects that come and go, as all things come and go. And the old saying, the point of it is not to calm the waves of the ocean, but to teach you how to surf up and down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And my faith, that was part of my faith, that we don't pray for a specific outcome, like just on a concrete level like this, that I already was my belief is not to pray for this to happen or pray to that to happen, but, to be prepared, for me to be prepared to deal with this, or to, that I'm upheld through whatever it is I'm going through. So it is aligned with that. It's just that, there's such an urge to just want that outcome. It's so natural, and you still want, it's okay to want the outcome. Like, I think that's where it can get confusing, that desperately wanting something to end up a certain way is normal. And of course, I mean, unless you're a very exceptional person, you're going to want life to work out in certain ways that are important to you, and it's okay to still desperately wish for that. It's just about, how are you going to be if it doesn't? Because something isn't going to work out the way you're going to want it to. So
underneath that desperate need is an important message to acknowledge. Yes, I desperately want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Is one level, but beneath it is, I love my kids so much. I want more out of life. I'm grieving the idea that it could be far shorter than I want it to be. I'm hungry for more. I'm sad that my family is worrying, right? To pray, to cling, to hope for that. Only the positive outcome is one level of a love, right? That is breaking your heart and bursting it open, and how to travel with wisdom into that need, that desire, not in a way that clings to one inevitable outcome, but in a way that opens you to life in this moment and all of the nuances of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you articulated that really well. That's exactly what I was trying to get at, that the two are not mutually exclusive. Like, if I try to find acceptance, not really the right word, but if I try to find some kind of peace that with everything that might be happening, then it means that I have to let go of this real desperate wish to continue living, and they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking, as a Christian minister and chaplain, I'm thinking of the teachings of Jesus, which they're supposed to be very comforting, but when you really look at them, they're terrifying. When he says, "Blessed are the poor," oh my goodness. He doesn't say, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will be comforted." He doesn't say, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," because God's going to fix that problem.
Right.
No,
Right.
they'll be comforted, and through the comfort, through the love, they experience a deeper relationship and connection
Right.
to the divine, to themselves, to each other, and that's what it's all about.
Yes. That's the
Yeah,
beauty that comes in those painful moments. And
yeah,
I think another thing for me, I guess I call it gratitude, but it's not really, maybe gratitude isn't the right word for it. It's not, being thankful for what I have or the people that I have around me. It's more just what was very comforting for me is when I can tap into that knowledge that the idea of a smooth path in life where I'm going to keep going on the road that I have got myself onto, it's going to be straight and it's going to be smooth. Like that was always an illusion. That was never actually reality. So just that you're now becoming aware, in the only way that you can become aware, like the rude awakening. Um, but there was a lot of comfort in realizing, no, the earth hasn't shifted off its axis. This is not abnormal. This is normal. This is life, and those are trite kind of statements like that's life, but actually it's kind of true. That is life. And I got a lot of comfort from that. And the word that feels to me to be right for that is gratitude, but it's not, I think, the way most people use it, but just a sense of rightness about it. It's not right. I don't wish for it, but it's not. It's not that something has, it's not an atrocity. This is what happens. Look around you. Look around you. I think.
It is the truth, and I guess the word that, or the expression that would come to mind for me is it resonates with the truth. You somehow were dropped into that kind of higher level of understanding to say this is the reality of our human experience, and you went away from, we are invulnerable in our 30s and 40s, and so then when you kind of resonate with the truth, it's like, that feels good because now I know what I'm working with, and that can be to give you the sense of gratitude, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I do want to bring up the issue of fear because you've come to this kind of level of acceptance. This is how we humans live. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Yes, we can hold our hope for a wonderful outcome, realizing that things may not go that way, and to have that feeling of gratitude or acceptance around it. But there's actually work to be done around the issue of fear. And I'm wondering if you were willing to kind of comment on how you grappled with that whole issue of fear of dying, fear of not being there for your kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. You can get panicky in moments. I think it's quite normal for the anxiety or the fear. And I'm not an anxious person. I'm not a worrier. Well, I think about things a lot, but I don't worry for sport, for example. I don't worry as a habit, but I do remember almost getting overwhelming feelings of panic about the possibilities. And, there's no easy answer. I think meditation is extremely helpful for that. And then, the logical side of me starts kicking in, like, you're tending to worry about every possible thing that can happen, and they're not all going to happen. And, I kind of rationalize it away, but I think the fear can almost be like a physical thing, and a physical solution is helpful, like meditation and things that can almost be like a solve for it.
Did you ever think of kind of some of the worst case scenarios and said, that's not quite as bad as it appears?
Oh yeah.
Can you give an example of that?
Well, just the kids being motherless. I mean, I think any woman or any parent who's still got young children and is facing a serious kind of cancer, I think that's probably their biggest preoccupation. And there is no, like, there's no way around it. It's horrible. The whole contemplating it. I think for me, like, I was just thinking, hoping for time, that every year is another year that you have to kind of shore them up against what the future might be. But I did find that it's easy to catastrophize. And, I think I probably shared this, that, my own minister in speaking with me said, like, what would be so horrible about them losing their mother? And like, just to say that, I thought, like, I could have slapped him. It's a shocking thing to say, but I think, I don't know what would get in his head actually to say something like that. But I think it forced me maybe to think, well, my kids are strong people, and they'll have other loving people around them, and they've got a very involved dad, and to maybe pull yourself back a little bit from full-on catastrophe, making sure that you're giving a fair balance to what the situation would be. But there's just no getting around how painful, contemplating that is.
Yeah, and agreed. There's no way out. The fear is there.
But the imagining of it, or blocking it out, is worse for me personally. And I think I shared this, that it's sort of like you've got a boogeyman in the closet, and he's much scarier in the closet than, not that closet, but in your mental closet, than if you just go open the door, get your flashlight, look around, and go, okay, well, yeah, he's pretty big, he's got big teeth, and he's got some claws, like, figure out exactly what it is, because it'll get it into proportion. So it was the same with the kids. I think it's still a monster, but actually visioning in my mind, okay, well, let's go there for a few minutes. As I said, you don't want to be in the mental space of thinking about that all the time, but just go there and visualize how it might be and how it might work, and the fact that it's not them dying, they're still going to be alive, they're going to be still having a lot of positive things in their life, they're not going to cease to exist. It was helpful for me. I think I shared that with you, because for me, the possibilities, the unexamined possibilities, had the potential to be bigger than the examined possibilities.
Yeah, it's looking at reality and keeping reality in balance. Have you found over the years, the health scare from 2 years ago aside, have you found that over the years that kind of feeling of fear comes to you less often or less intensely? What's been the experience as you travel away and the years going by and your chances of cure get higher? What's it like?
Well, my oncologist shared with me that a lot of patients feel that as time goes on, their chance of recurrence gets higher.
Really?
Yeah, because they feel like, well, their chance of recurrence that year or in that moment, because it hasn't happened yet, so it's kind of like it's more likely to be now because it hasn't happened yet, kind of thing. I don't know if you've ever heard that. For me, you get distance from it. I think when you've had, I did have the sense that my cancer was kind of a serious one. It wasn't like, it wasn't a kind of a sissy cancer. It kind of had, bad cell markers and had invaded blood vessels and lymph nodes were there. I feel like it lives within me, and that we're just at peace with each other. That's kind of how I, envision it. So there is the offshoot of that is the sense that the other shoe could drop at any time. But it's not something you think, as time goes on, you think about it much less. That's my own experience. Things bring you back. You have a headache. You think, oh, why do I have a headache? I don't get headaches, or this, that intense pain that I had in my rib. That, I had a lot of weeks to try to, make sure I was ready to hear what the answer was going to be. And it was kind of the opposite, actually, of my initial diagnosis, which was like there was no time to kind of brace myself. This was the opposite. I had probably 4 weeks to sort of think, okay, this could be cancer back in the bone. How am I going to deal with that? And it was good, actually. It was good so when I was ready to hear what the results were, I was ready for anything.
So there's the example of how you said at the beginning of our interview, you have to move through the fear, not suppress it, not go around it, not deny it, go through it. And those times, even now, that state of ambiguity and living with cancer, there may not be any markers in your body indicating it's active or present, and yet in your consciousness, you're watching and you're waiting, and your life feels different.
Yeah.
Not constantly different, but you can return to that awareness, even just with a thought. And, but then even more when you get an ache or a pain. Learning to work with fear, going to the place that scares you, opening up to a courageous, doesn't even feel courageous, but a quality of presence that says, well, I can do this because I have to do this, and this is my life, and here we are. Well, let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think gratitude comes in because and I mean gratitude in like the typical way. It's hard to be sorry or feel sorry for yourself when you have so many blessings and the quality of relationships and love and those blessings in your life. So focusing on those. But I would say that I would be surprised if there's too many people with cancer who don't kind of walk differently after that. Although I could be wrong. I was speaking today with a friend whose husband had a different type of cancer, and he's different. Like, he's put the lid on it, and that's done and moved on, doesn't think about it. And so it's probably a personality. Different people respond in different ways. And for me, it's definitely, it's there for sure. I mean, it's a life-changing experience. It's like any life-changing experience. You're not the same afterwards. And
isn't it interesting how you can be grateful for that you're not the same afterwards? The question often doesn't. The question often becomes not why did I get cancer, but what am I going to do with it?
Oh, exactly. See, I agree with you 100%, and I really don't believe myself, and I know many people do, and that's fine, but I do not believe it, that sort of everything happens for a reason kind of thing. I just don't. I cannot come to terms with that idea, but what I do feel is that we find the meaning in the things that happen to us. Stuff just happens, like it just happens, and then you find how to make meaning in your life out of the stuff that happens.
Which is a deep way of engaging with your life, a much deeper level of engagement than could have been possible before.
Mm-hmm.
And cancer can be an invitation, or can we perhaps best to say an opportunity to step up to deep engagement, courageous love, vulnerability and strength, capacity to hold life and death, fear and gratitude, all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think it's not that you get cancer because you need that experience or that somebody thought you needed that. You just got cancer, but it is like any sort of traumatic life experience. It's an opportunity for growth and change and engagement, and that's it's the beauty. Like it's a beautiful kind of painful. Well, for me, there were moments where I felt a lot of beauty. It's like the veneer. You know how it says like the nerves are exposed to the air, and you're just like, It's the opposite of the way you walk through life. Alternatively, is with kind of like a thick coating, like a thick skin covering you, and it dulls your senses and it dulls your connection to the things around you. So there's beauty in that.
Yes.
It's painful. Yeah.
I think that's a very poignant note to wrap up on. Rob, do you have any other questions or comments on that? I'm feeling the...
I'm really grateful, Karen, for you to join us, and really thank you so much for just sharing that great lived wisdom. So my heart's quite full right now, so thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was really helpful for me to not just share it, but also to hear some of my ideas re-expressed back to me in such eloquent ways. So thank you.
Well, a great privilege. We've been chatting with Karen Raymer about her experience with breast cancer and the cancer journey, and hope that it's been a way that you've been able to open up to your wisdom, right, and to hold the complexity of the experience in your heart, and perhaps help you with conversations about that with your family, and to connect your life in a much deeper way. So I'm David McGinley, chaplain with the Cancer Program here in Halifax with Rob Rutledge, the Healing Cancer Podcast. And thanks again, Karen. And all the best to everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob and David.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.